Good morning, dear students. Today we have the fourth section from chapter 1. We have the Christmas argument. We left Stephen deadless in the infirmary, the hospital, with the brother Michael, and with the vision of Parnell's death. Brother Michael is crying. Lots of people were crying, and the image of Dante, proud, walking in a maroon dress and a green mantle. We left that part. Now, here we are at Christmas. Christmas cheers and a religious occasion that Stephen was longing for. He even inscripted on his desk, day by day, when will Christmas come? Because during this Christmas, he is going to change from a boy to adulthood. He's going to be able to sit at the table with the grown-ups for the first time. Instead of going to bed early with the rest of the kids, he will be able to say the prayers during dinner. So he's looking forward for this one. So, of course, the scene starts with the same image all over again. Fire, fire. The first thing we see, and Stevens directs our attention to, is the chandelier that's above the table, the Christmas dinner table. This chandelier has fire, as if it's just telling you that this table is going to witness the fire of nar al-fitna, like we say, the fire of arguments between politic and religion. So, Stephen describes it in detail: a great fire, banked high and red, flamed in the gratin under the ivy-twined branches of the chandelier. The Christmas table was spread. See the image? We start with the chandelier that has the fire. So, who's in this Christmas dinner? We have Uncle Charles, we have Dante, which is continually referred to as Mrs. Rodin, because Mr. Casey calls her that. He doesn't call her Dante like Stephen and the Deadlesses. So, and we have Stephen for the first time. We have Simon Deadless, which is Stephen's father, and we have Mrs. Deadless. So, Uncle Charles and Mrs. Deadless are on no one's side, as you remember. They are not political, they are not religious, they are in between. We have Dante on the Catholic side, the religious side. Here she's representing everything that uh, has to do with religion in Ireland and during that period of time. On the opposite side, we have Mr. Casey and we have Simon Deadless. Both of them are patriotic Irishmen who believe in the home rule, that the Irish should rule their own destiny instead of Britain. And they, of course, are sad because Parnell has died because of the Catholic condemnation of him. Okay, so here you can imagine Stephen's first time at the table with adults. He's saying prayers and thinking of his brothers. It was his first Christmas dinner, and he thought of his little brothers and sisters who were waiting in the nursery, as he had often waited. The deep low color, and he keeps on continuing how he used to do, and how he used to be waiting there, but now he's not. He's on the table. But the problem is that during mass, before the dinner Christmas, all family members goes to mass to the church to pray the Christmas prayers. And during that mass, it appears that the priests and the religious men talked about politics from the altar. So Mr. Casey and Simon were criticizing the priests. They're saying they're religious people. Why are they talking about politics? And here Dante defends her church in an extreme way. She says, "It is religion," Dante said. They are doing their duty. They are doing their duty in warning people. Okay, Mr. Casey said, "We go to the house of God," Mr. Casey said, "in all humanity, in all humility to pray to our Maker, not to hear election addresses." This is a very straightforward point. We go to church to pray to God. We don't want to hear politics from non politic people. Religion should stay at the church. But Dante keeps insisting that everything is related to religion, even politics. She keeps saying, "It is religion." She keeps repeating the same word. Dante said again, "They are right. They must direct their flock." "And to preach politics from the altar, is it?" asked Mr. Dedalus. Mr. Dedalus. "Certainly," said Dante. "It is a question of public morality. A priest would not be a priest if he did not tell his flock what is right and what is wrong." Mrs. Dedalus laid down her knife and fork and said, "For pity's sake and for pity's sake, let us have no political discussions on this day of all days in the year, because it's Christmas, it's the day of forgiveness, and, you know, family ties." "Quite right, madame," said Uncle Charles. "No, Simon, that's quite enough now. Not another word now." "Yes, yes," said Mr. Douglas quickly. So, every time they start fighting, the religion represented by Dante against politics represented by Mr. Casey and Mr. Dedalus, Uncle Charles and Mrs. Dedalus try to calm them down because it's a day of the year that they have to be all harmonious and loving. But Mr. Casey and Mr. Dedalus didn't let it go. They said, "The bishops and the priest of Ireland has spoken," said Dante, "and they must be obeyed." What did they say? Okay, here we are continuing to talk about the relationship, the adulterous relationship that Parnell had with Catherine O'Shea, nicknamed Kitty O'Shea. This adulterous relationship made this great Irish leader lose all his popularity among the Irish people. So the bishops and priests condemned him as a sinner because he's an adulterer. On the other hand, politicians and patriots, to be exact, couldn't live without Parnell. If he is a sinner, if he's an adulterer, who is going to lead them against Britain? "Let them leave politics alone," said Mr. Casey, "or the people may leave their church alone." Angry here, Dante's going is accelerating. She's becoming angry. "You hear?" said Dante, turning to Mrs. Dedalus. "Mr. Casey, Simon," said Mrs. Dedalus, "let it end now." Too bad," said Uncle Charles. "What?" cried Mr. Dedalus. "Were we to desert him at the bidding of English people?" Here he's referring to who? Again, to Parnell. Should we desert Parnell because English people wants us to? The English people here, he means the Catholic, because the Catholic Church is backed by the British. "He was no longer worthy to lead," said Dante. "He was a public sinner." "We are all sinners and black sinners," said Mr. Casey coldly. So, here Dante is getting very angry, and instead of representing a good example and a role model of a true Christian Catholic, she getting messed up, bringing all kind of words and quotations from the Bible that fit or they don't fit. For example, here she said, "Woe be the man whom thy scandal cometh," said Mr. Rodran. "It would be better for him that a millstone were tied about his neck, and that he were cast into the depth of the sea, rather than he should scandalize one of these, my least little ones." That is the language of the Holy Ghost. Here, Dante is saying that the Christ in his Bible is saying that a priest should not be touched, should not be scandalized, otherwise, they should be thrown into the sea with their necks tied with a millstone. In fact, this quotation is from Matthew's. It doesn't represent a priest or religious people. No, here God is warning all people who abuses children and scandalize children. Pay attention. That's why God's saying everyone who hurt little ones, who hurt children, he should be thrown into the sea with a millstone tied in his neck. But here Dante wants to back and support her priest in every possible way, even using quotation that have nothing to do with it. And she continues on. And she says, "This is the language of the Holy Ghost." Here, Mr. Dedalus said, "And a very bad language, if you ask me," said Mr. Dedalus coolly. This is blasphemy. He cannot say that the language of the Holy Ghost is bad, especially in front of his child. That's why Uncle Charles tells him, "Simon, Simon," said Uncle Charles, "the boy." You have to be very careful what do you say in front of people, in front of children, because they're like sponges. They just absorb everything that is around them. "Yes, yes," said Mr. Douglas. I meant about I was thinking about the bad language of a railway porter." "Well, now, that's all right. Here, Stephen, show me your plate, old chap. Eat away now, here." So Mr. Douglas noticed that his son is sitting, and he should not do that in front of him. So he wants to, cover what he just said, and said, "It's not. I'm not talking about the language of the Bible. Of course not. I'm talking about the railway porter." And he tries to, you know, just direct him by telling him, "You can go ahead and eat." Okay. Now everything, everything became to be very exhilarating. "Really, Simon? You should not speak that way before Stephen. It's not right." "Oh, he'll remember all this when he grows up," said Dante hotly. "The language he heard against God and religion and priest in his own home. Okay, this is very important. Everyone knows that the child will remember, yet no one stops. They keep on arguing and shouting and blasphemies all over the place, and everyone is just cursing everything." "Let him remember, too," cried Mr. Casey to her from across the table, "the language with which the priest pounds broke Parnell's heart and haunted him into his grave. Let him remember that, too, when he grows up." Now, he's going to remember what? He's remember the priest, he remember that broke Parnell's heart, and he's going to remember how religious men are talked badly about. And he keeps on cursing Mr. Delis, saying really bad words that I'm not going to read. Who was right then? Here, Stephen is for the first time trying to decide which right, which side is right. Who is he going to stand for? Is he for religion or is he for politics? Is he for the maroon or is he for the green? He has to pick a side. It is too early in his age to do that, but he wants to be safe and right. Stephen looked with affection at Mr. Casey's face. with which stared across the table over his joined hands. He liked to sit near him at the fire, looking up at his dark, furious face. But his dark eyes were never furious, and his slow voice was good to listen to. But why was he then against the priest? Here, he's confused. He loves Mr. Casey, and he loves the priest. But Mr. Casey is against the priest. So he's asking, why is he against them? If he's against the priest, should I love him or should I love the priest? Because Dante must be right then. Okay, now he loves Dante too, and Dante must be right. But he had heard his father say that she was a spoiled nun, which means she was committed to being a nun, but then she ran away and she got married. That's why she's called a spoiled nun. And here Stephen is trying to justify why Dante, for example, doesn't approve of the opposite side. Perhaps that made her severe against Parnell. Okay. And she did not like him to play with Elaine because Elaine was a Protestant. And when she was young, she knew children that used to play with the Protestants. And the Protestants used to make fun of the Litany of a Blessed Virgin, a tower of ivory. They used to say house of gold. How could a woman be a tower of ivory or a house of gold? Who was right then? Here he's disturbed, he's confused. Okay, he's mixed up. He is not only confused of between politics and religion. Within religion, the two sects are fighting. Here he's referring to the Tower of Ivory, which Catholic refer to Holy Mary, Virgin Mary, as the Tower of Ivory, while the Protestant call her the House of Gold. They're only names that they give her. You know, they call her the House of Gold because she housed Jesus Christ. He was in her womb, and she gave birth to gold, which is the Christ. It's just an imagery, while Catholic called her the Tower of Ivory because she is pure as white and she's pure as marble, but at the same time she's very strong, cannot be broken, just like ivory. Okay. Dante broke in angrily. If we are a priest-ridden race, we ought to be proud of it. They are the apple of God's eye. Touch them not, says Christ, for they are the apple of my eye. Here, God is not referring to priest as the apple of his eyes. He's talking about the children of Israel, but Dante wants to use it. Just be careful not to trespass and not to say bad things about my priest. And can we not love our country then? Asked Mr. Casey. It means it's either loving the priest or your country. Can't we love them both? Are we not to follow the man that was born to lead us? Should we? Who is born to lead us? Of course, Parnell. A traitor to his country, replied Dante. A traitor, an adulterer. The priests were right to abandon him. The priests were always the true friends of Ireland. Okay. Here, were they? Faith, said Mr. Casey. He threw his fist on the table and, frowning angrily, he said, didn't the bishops of Ireland betray us in the time of union? And he continues saying all the occasions when the priest let Ireland people down. Okay. Right. They were always right. God and morality and religion come first. Mrs. Dedalus, seeing her excitement, said, Mrs. Rodran, don't excite yourself answering them. God and religion before everything, Dante cried. God and religion before the world. Mr. Casey raised his clenched fist and brought it down on the table with a crash. You see here, they are literally fighting and hitting on the table, and the child is just looking at them, bewildered. Very well then, he shouted hoarsely. If it comes to that, no God for Ireland. John! John! cried Mr. Dedalus, seizing his guest by the coat sleeve. Dante stared across the table, her cheeks shaking. Mr. Casey struggled up from his chair and bent across the table towards her, scrubbing the air from before his eyes with one hand as though he were tearing aside a cobweb. No God for Ireland, he cried. We have had too much God in Ireland. Away with God! Dante made Mr. Casey so angry that he denounces God. If God doesn't stand for Ireland, then he should not be there. Okay, here Stephen is looking at the figures of authority, all losing control, and when Dante loses control, she simply leaves as if escaping this maze, this labyrinth. She shouted, "A blasphemer! Devil!" screamed Dante, starting to her feet and almost spitting in his face. Uncle Charles and Mr. Dedalus pulled Mr. Casey back into his chair again, talking to him from both sides reasonably. He stared before him out of his dark, flaming eyes, repeating, "Away with God, I say!" Dante shoved her chair violently aside and left the table, upsetting her napkins with rolling slowly along the carpet, and came to rest against the foot of an easy chair. Mrs. Dedalus rose quickly and followed her towards the door. At the door, Dante turned around violently and shouted down the room, her cheek flushed and quivering with rage. "Devil out of hell, we won! We crushed him to death! Fiend!" Okay. She lost control and the door slammed behind her. She said that she killed him, as if she's a murderer here. She's committing a murder, but since it's against an adulterer, so it's okay. Mr. Casey, freeing his arms from his holders, suddenly bowed head on his hands with a sob of pain. "Poor Parnell!" he cried loudly. "My dead king!" He sobbed loudly and bitterly. Can you imagine a child sitting with adults, all this conflict, this doubt and anger and pain? He's seeing all of the adult figures here losing control, some of them angry, some of them sad. He's seeing his father crying, and not only his father, his best father's friend too. Stephen raising his terror-stricken face, he was terrorized, so that his father's eyes were full of tears. A very moving experience for the child. Thank you for listening.